Welcome to Christ Notes today. Thanks for logging on. As always, I appreciate it so much. We're going to continue talking today about Paul and his relationship with the church of Judea. So in verse 6, he says he'd been there with Titus. He'd gone back. He's telling them the gospel. Remember that we talked about yesterday. Paul was led by the Holy Spirit to go back to the brethren at Judea, the apostles, the 12, the leaders of the church, and share the gospel with them. Remember how we also talked about how James, who was kind of the pseudo leader of the church, was sending thugs over to Galatia to try to steal their glory, to try to steal their freedom, trying to put laws back on them. So listen what Paul writes here. He's meeting with these guys. He's meeting with James. He's meeting with the leaders of the church. He says, moreover, no new requirements were made by those who were reputed to be something. That's kind of a strange thing to say about the leaders of the church, isn't it? They were reputed to be something. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. Listen what he goes on to says. Though what was their individual position and whether they really were of importance or not makes no difference to me. I mean, that's like going over to the Pope and saying, whether he's something or not, I don't really care. Listen what he goes on to say. God is not impressed with the positions that men hold, and he is not partial and recognizes no external distinctions. That ought to give us all so much hope. Because what it means, titles don't mean a thing. They don't mean a thing for us. We're all equal. Because right back to the parable when Jesus was talking, and he said, some of you will work the whole day. Some of you work half the day. Some of you work just at the very end of the day. Yet, you're all going to get the same reward. That should give us so much hope. We want to put people up on pedestals because they have a title. Well, that's a pastor. That's an elder. God's not impressed with that sort of thing. God will use every last one of us. Every part of his body, from the least to the greatest, is very important to our Father. He'll use us all, and it doesn't matter whether we give a title to ourselves or not, or man gives us a title. And this is the thing. Think of Jesus. King of Kings, Lord of Lords, God in the flesh. When he was around, what did people call him? They called him Jesus. Titles. Beware of people who want titles. Beware of the guy that wants you to call him by a different name. Beware of people who want to dress differently and act differently than you, and who get all caught up in, well, I'm an elder, I'm a pastor, I'm a prophet, whatever. If somebody actually has to have that name on them and they're worried about it, they're probably not the thing they're calling themselves. Let other people call you that. Like Jesus said, when you go into the church, when you go into the fellowships, when you go into the places where people are gathering, don't seek out the best seat. Go to the back. If man wants you to come up and be in the best seat, they'll come and they'll get you. Same thing with titles. If somebody has to call themselves an elder, probably not an elder. And that's what Paul's writing here. These apostles, maybe they were something, maybe they weren't. I don't care. God doesn't care. But I think it's showing, and why he's writing it is he's telling the Galatians, because these guys are coming over to Galatia from the church of Judea, and they're trying to put a law on them. They're trying to put rules on them. They're trying to steal their liberty. They're trying to steal their freedom. And Paul's letting the people of Galatia know, that's not where it's at. You began in the Holy Spirit. You're not now made perfect by the flesh. You foolish Galatians, don't go back to that stuff. The rules and the laws, they will stifle you. They will kill you. Remember what we studied yesterday, that all of the requirements have been fully met in us by Jesus, and now none of our justification, none whatsoever, counts on us keeping the law of any kind. That's freedom, and we have it. And who Jesus has set free, we're free indeed. He goes on here, he says, they had nothing to add to my gospel. Well, of course they didn't, because the gospel is the gospel. The gospel is Jesus came. He's greater in you than anything that's in this world. He'll be in you. He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. His gifts and his call are irrevocable. He'll never withdraw them once they're given to you. That's the gospel, that we're one with Jesus. Jesus is one with our Father. We're all one together. And that will let the world know. Remember what that says. That'll let the world know that our Father loves them every bit as much as he loves us. I mean, every bit as much as he loves Jesus. He loves us every bit as much as he loves Jesus. So they gave him no new suggestions. He says, but on the contrary, when they really saw that I had been trusted to carry the gospel to the uncircumcised, as Peter had been entrusted to proclaim the gospel to the Jews. So look what they're saying there. They realized, how are they going to argue with Paul? I mean, Paul was being used by our Father in ways that the church in Judea was not being used. And Paul doesn't seem to have a personality where he's going to take any guff from anybody. But he had that because the Holy Spirit was great in him. And he went out there and he was being used by our Father. And our Father was going back. I really honestly believe this. Because when we're going to read here later in chapter 2, that Peter kind of got caught up in all this rules and laws stuff and circumcision and not circumcised. And Paul calls him out on it. And so I think our Father really was sending Paul back to preach to the people of the church, to set them free, because our Father's love. Everything he does is love, even with the elders, even with those who are wrong. Same thing with us today. If you've got in a relationship or a church where they're kind of putting a lot of rules on you and laws, love them. Bless those that curse you. Pray for those that despitefully use you. And if somebody's all caught up and having a title put on themselves, intercede for them. Pray for them. Forgive them, and they will be forgiven. Whosoever sins we forgive, they're forgiven. That's why we have the Holy Spirit. That's the gift we're able to give to people. Jesus ever lives to intercede so that people are saved to the uttermost. We're one with him. So we too will ever live to intercede for people so that we can be used to let people have life and have it abundantly, even if they're flat out wrong. That's the glory of the church. That's the glory of who we are. I hope this encourages you. The word will not fall void to the earth. Be blessed this day in the power of our Father's might. And as always, thank you so much for logging on.